Good morning, everyone. I'm San Tricanthan. I'm the chair of Start Network, and it's my great pleasure, along with Christina, who will speak after a few words from me, to welcome you to this year's virtual assembly, which is starting, and you are in the opening plenary session. And we don't want to delay or hold you up from some very exciting sessions today, but I thought that I'd just begin by setting the context in which we're holding this virtual assembly in terms of what's happening in the wider world and the challenges we face together, and why I certainly feel that this assembly is so important. And then Christina will go on to talk about what we've accomplished this year and what we hope to do over the next 2 days. I think it's fair to say we've not seen such disinterest in the state of the poorest and most vulnerable in the world since COVID, which doesn't seem that far away. But governments at that time were increasingly looking to protect their own population rather than the greater global good of helping all populations. In fact, one country leader in the West said that aid groups are making the problem worse by helping refugees and migrants move to donor countries, which couldn't be further from the truth when we're trying to keep the poorest and most vulnerable alive. And I think it's in this climate of irrational fear that we have seen this alarming withdrawal of aid from long-standing government donors, and very little that is new to replace it. And the competition for funds to do life-saving work is more than just hard. It's killing people who relied on the partnership with civil society organizations like you all. And this is something you know better than I. So it's incredibly hard to see how, but we have accomplished so much in this climate of less. And I think that is really taking my hat off to all of you and the work you've done in this past year. We also need to recognize that the old order of things is not coming back. There isn't going to be a rush of donor governments reinstating their aid budgets. But actually, some of the best ideas in the last 25 years in the sector have come from civil society, from all of you, from the use of cash to the emergency rooms in Sudan, the growth of women led organizations in the last 25 years. These are ideas that have come from civil society, i.e., us. And it's not surprising that even governments who have cut aid spending have shown faith in the model that Start Network is all about, the network of networks. And I'm sure Christina and Suzanne and others will talk more about how we've done this year and how donors still have faith in the model that we began. And that's why it's so important that we take this time this week to share learning and show to each other how we're delivering impact. The humanitarian world can be a lonely place when everyone is really feeling that pressure that the sector is under. And if nothing else, I think these 2 days remind us that we have a lot in common and a lot still to learn from each other. Christina and I were at the farewell drinks for a senior member of the UK Foreign Office aid team a couple of weeks ago, and it was a very lonely place in that room. I think everyone felt slightly alone, but I remember one person saying that at least with Start Network, you have a community that you can talk to, rely on, learn from, and one that donors still believe in. And I think it's really exciting to be part of that and be part of this group. So we then need to really take that sense of shared purpose that we get from events like this virtual assembly and channel it toward the global order. So it's not just taking comfort from being able to talk to each other and learn from each other, but also using what we've taken from these days to change the global order, to make the changes that we need to see. There's talk of the humanitarian reset being the answer, but we also need to not just reset, but rethink. And I think a lot of the ideas of rethink rather than reset are coming from Start Network and all of you. So it would be great to put that in writing into what we mean and how we use that, because the old order is not coming back and the sector is changing for good. I think what's fortunate for us is I've never been surer that it is changing toward a vision that Start articulated at its creation over a decade ago. So we are on the right side of history. we are growing, our membership is growing, and more importantly, there are ever more people who want to join Start Network who are not yet in Start Network. So we are definitely on the right track, despite the challenges I talked about when I first started speaking this morning. And we need to take comfort in that, but also we need to go away with shared learnings that we can use to change the sector and the global order out of these 2 days, and also the Start Network Assembly in person as well. So I hope that's what your notebooks will be getting out of the next 2 days, and also contributing, because wherever you're working, whichever part of the network you're in, you have ideas, because as we've seen in the last 25 years, the best ideas have come from civil society and the network of networks. So thank you all. And I hope you get as much from the next 2 days as I have in these virtual assemblies. And please allow me to hand over to Christina, the Chief Executive of Start Network.
Thanks very much, Sanj, for those opening words. Yes, we are in a climate of less, but I entirely agree with you that it is that Start Network is on the right side of history, and that it is our playbook that is playing out across the sector right now. So welcome everybody to the Start Network Virtual Assembly 2025, the power of networks in the future of aid. This year's assembly is built around a really compelling idea. It's exactly the same idea that Sanj has just articulated, that networks hold the key to the effectiveness, impact, and ethics of the future of our sector. From the widening funding gaps to shrinking civic space, global humanitarian relief is in a bit of a free fall, and emergency needs are highest than they have ever been. I know you all know these statistics, but in 2025, global humanitarian resources will have shrunk by as much as 50%, even as needs in Sudan, Gaza, Ukraine, and many other emergencies continue to steadily grow. And we see this in our own programs. Start Fund has never been more active. Lives are already being lost, and under any scenario, the implosion of this funding will cost many more. Some estimates project potential death tolls in the 6 to 7 figures. So 1 year ago in this very forum, I spoke about the damaging and dehumanizing conduct of states in these crises. And I asked whether humanitarianism as a concept and a practice had reached its limits. In fact, we had a whole panel on it last year. And even before the devastating aid cuts of 2025, panelists were all agreed. We needed to make deep changes in our purpose, our power, our practice, our resources, and our relationships for our sector to meet the demands of this time. So now today, Start Network membership must meet this moment. And our assembly offers that important opportunity to reflect on how our network must be a critical pillar in the future of aid. Why? Because it is clear to me, as Sanj has just said, that the future of humanitarian assistance, whether for conflict, climate, through grants or loans or investment or self-help or mutual aid, can no longer rely on the traditional institutions in their current form. They won't uphold our norms, extend our values, and deliver the resilient communities that today's crises require. The future of aid must be about networks, the people that make them up, and the strength of the connections between them. So here we are at the 2025 Assembly, and as in previous years, we're holding it in 2 parts. Our virtual sessions, which will take place today and tomorrow, are open to all, and we've had close to 600 registrations for these virtual sessions. Members, partners, donors, those wanting to learn more about our work, and welcome then to everyone. I am so pleased that so many of you have joined us and will be joining us over the next couple of days. Next month, so in October, we'll convene our entire membership just outside of London for our in-person assembly and annual general meeting to learn, to build, to explore, and to decide together on what future initiatives we will undertake. But across all of these virtual and in-person sessions, we'll share with you where we have made progress across our growing network, now 145 local, national, and international organizations strong. Progress against our funds and financing mechanisms. We just celebrated our 1,000th Start Fund alert, our largest Start Ready risk pool, including 14 hazards in 9 countries. We're working on microfinance. We're working on insurance. Our suite of investment and financing products is growing. Progress also, though, on how we're reinforcing community knowledge and peer accountability across our hubs. And progress on how we're taking the network's evidence and insight to influence others in global and local spaces. And all of this in the name of changing a system at a time when changes are not a choice, but they are an imperative. So I just got back from New York. I was at the UN General Assembly in New York Climate Week. And, coming out of a week of so many meetings, so many discussions, so much input, for me, it was frustration and promise in equal parts. Frustration at the evident polarization at the UN General Assembly, with speeches denouncing the very purpose of multilateralism, protests on Gaza, Ukraine, assaults on climate and migration, both inside the chamber and out in the New York City streets. It was a dynamic that suggested that multilateralism is being replaced with something else, multipolarity. In other words, alliances that used to be based on shared interests, values, common cause, are now being replaced with transactional politics, opportunistic, short-term, and fluid. And as San just said, there is now frustration that there will be no near-term rollback of the US aid cuts. And at best, what we can expect from America is sporadic tolerance, while the system that it funded scrambles to catch its breath, cut costs, reset, and preserve as much life-saving assistance as possible. Frustration now at the continued slaughter, in particular in Gaza and in Ukraine, both the international emblems for political failure, system failure, normative failure, human failure. With famine declared in Gaza and the UN's designation of that crisis as a genocide, Philip Lazzarini, UNRWA's Commissioner General, has described it as a graveyard for international humanitarian law. Frustration that despite all of these dynamics inside the many meetings I attended, it was business as usual, as though the best that the UN could muster up at a time of its existential debate was simply to muddle along. And what was up with those escalators? But across all of the frustration, there was also promise, as initiatives such as Project 109 on UN Charter reform and the donor roundtables on the future of aid attracted high-level speakers, politicians, heads of state, and stole some of the media attention from the detractors. Promise that despite UN General Assembly headliners claiming that climate change is a hoax on the stage of the Clinton Global Initiative, at Start Network's own event on insurance, business leaders, influencers, artists, and entrepreneurs took the stage with examples of how they were applying business acumen, science, dance, social media to pull carbon out of the air, to ensure farmers, to mobilize youth, to raise funds to combat the climate crisis. Indeed, what I saw across public panels and private roundtables is that people, not institutions, are finding and funding creative solutions. And whatever the spaces I was in, it was clear that Start Network is practicing today what everyone else is only speaking about. And the work that this network is doing is a testament to that. So today and tomorrow, we're going to talk about all of this work, and we have an incredibly full program. Immediately following this session, I'll join Ailey Kennedy, who will present the outputs of the IRN study on the future of aid 2040, a study that many of you participated in earlier this year. We'll next consider regional perspectives on the future of aid, a joint session held in collaboration with the Humanitarian Practice Network, also known as HPN. Will center panelists working across Africa, Asia, and the Middle East on current reform efforts. We'll give you an update on the Start Network Solidarity Fund, which we launched last May to support humanitarian organizations affected by the US aid cuts. And we'll hear directly from Start Network members not only how that fund helped them navigate this uncertain period, but we'll discuss how their own operating models need to adapt. We'll finish today's sessions with a discussion on network approaches to accountability and how we use trust-based, localized, and peer-led approaches, such as Hub Health Check, to keep accountability close to communities. We've also got a full program for tomorrow, but I will let you look at the agenda for that. But if you haven't registered for tomorrow's event, please do so. It's going to be an incredibly insightful day. But onward to today. And Start Network assemblies are always unique opportunities to hear different voices, share different perspectives, and explore our varied experiences with the changing system. So immerse yourselves in these discussions, connect with your peers from across the sector and across the world. One takeaway for me from last week's General Assembly meetings was said by one of the UN's climate envoys in one of those meetings. He said, "Hope is not a strategy, but despair is not an antidote." So let these next 2 days be an opportunity to defy despair by exploring the possibilities of our changing sector, reflect, learn, and enjoy. Thanks very much for listening. Please join me now in the next session on the Future of Aid 2040, which is taking place now. See you all there and enjoy the rest of today and tomorrow. Thanks very much.